On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, revisiting our GTA predictions. Which side of the law are the protagonists on? And GTA Online's evolving cities. It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome along to episode 20 of GTA 6 o'clock. My name is James Jarvis, JJ, and I am joined by Dan Dawkins, DD.
Hello.
Hello, Dan. Special 20th episode this week. We're doing things slightly differently. Just before we get into that, people last week were saying they were a little disappointed with the intro voice. So hopefully...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't gruff enough. So this week, hopefully, you can let me know what you think. I've gone full movie trailer. But yes, for this special 20th episode, because that's what people celebrate, 20th versions of things, we are going to have a little look back at some of our old GTA 6 predictions from all the way back in February 2018. We did a special GTA 6 predictions episode of GTA 5 o'clock, as it was back then, and went through what we thought GTA 6 was going to be. Now, this was before, it was before the launch of PS5 and the current gen of consoles, but it was also before any of the leaks and, of course, before any of the trailers and that kind of thing. So this was us heavily speculating on what we think. We're going to have a look back at things we got right, some things we got wrong, some things that we can talk about. But I think what it does do is it actually allows us some jumping off points to talk about the themes that we were talking about then and how relevant they are now. And there's actually quite a lot of good stuff in here, Dan.
Yeah, there's two versions of this show. One where we just pick the clips where we got things horrendously wrong and we look like dummies, or the one where we cherry pick the best quotes and we look like geniuses. I think, as ever, we will try and tread the line between the both. What's interesting is, like you say, is thematically, a lot of what we were saying in 2018 feels true today. And I guess this is true because Rockstar would have gone through the same thought process where whilst GTA is yet to come out and we don't exactly know the upcoming release date, Rockstar did all the thinking about this game up to a decade ago. So it's interesting to compare our thought processes at the time with what's actually emerged. I think that's the really interesting bit. And, wow, even all this time on, a lot of it is turned out true.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to play some clips of that video. You can still find this video on this YouTube channel. I think it's called our GTA 6 Predictions. It's from February 2018. The top comment on that video is actually from 7 months ago, so people are still listening to that. It was from David Carrion, who said, "You guys better be coming back for GTA 6 o'clock." And, well, David, have I got some news for you.
You ask and you receive, David.
Here we are. One thing that was in that episode that I haven't clipped out, Dan, but it puts us off to a good start, is you say in the episode, is GTA 6 going to happen? Yes, it is. So that is one tick for us. You were correct. GTA 6 is happening.
What a prediction. Who would have thought they'd release the multi-million, billion seller GTA 6?
So let's kick off then. What we were talking about at this point in the episode was that Rockstar had said, well, it's what they'd said about GTA 6 back in 2018, which actually in that episode took us back to an interview that you and Tim had done up at Rockstar North with Leslie Benzies from 2013. So going back, this is 11 years ago. And this is what you had to say about that little chat.
GTA and, Rockstar North's former president, Leslie Benzies, and long-time listeners of GTA 5 o'clock might recognise him because he did an exclusive set of interviews with us back in 2013. Some of that's actually still very relevant today. Now, what he'd said back in 2013, this is in an interview with Develop magazine, he'd said, "We don't know what GTA 6 will be, but we've got some ideas." And he said, "We've got 45 years worth of ideas we want to do. We'll pick the right ones." He says, "It comes from the idea first. Where it's going to be set is the first question. Then it defines the missions. You're going to do different things in LA than you're going to do in New York and Miami."
So there you go. They were already, obviously, back then thinking about locations. Now, at the time, that felt like a reference towards GTA 5 versus GTA 4 versus Vice City. But looking back on it now, Dan, do you think that was the seeds of them saying, hey, you're going to be doing different things in LA than you would in New York or Miami? Do you think it was a seed towards maybe they were already thinking about Vice City back then?
Yeah, I think so. Well, what is clear is that even though Leslie Benzies, who was like the number one head honcho at Rockstar North, has left, the thinking processes that the company have retained or lived through. And we've talked about this idea on the show before of how even as people move in and out, there's like a philosophy or a development methodology that permeates the company. So, yeah, they would have been thinking about where we set it defines everything that follows, like even at that early stage. And it's pretty clear that they would have gone through the debate of, do we just stick to revisiting the same 3 locations for all time? Is the time right to redo Miami? And the name, kept coming up. I think the thing that felt like maybe a trip up was that there was talk of we may get onto this later. I think the houses had talked about, you could go back to Vice City, but it feels so tied to the 80s that even the houses had questioned whether that was the right thing to do. But this is going back, again, 6-7 years. And clearly we know the decision. They have gone back.
Yeah, I think we do have a clip about just that thing a bit later
perfect.
on.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that we've talked about on this show and during that GTA 5 show as well is that really, if you think about it, the GTA universe really only has 3 cities. Liberty City, Vice City, and then Los Santos, which is within San Andreas. But they haven't branched out of those 3 locations for a good, however long it's been since they started making, 3.
Yeah, there is a GTA London.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
But
one.
it's not real, is it? It's top-down GTA, and it's not the same 3D universe GTA. So in the 3D world, they've never broken outside these cities. Or I guess what they're doing is they're moving them from cities to states. They're expanding the scope and reach of them, but they've not done anything as bold as to say it's GTA UK, it's GTA Tokyo, as was a rumour a long time ago. That I don't know if there will come a point where they feel they ever want to do that, or they're just going to stick to essentially where their core audience is, North American audiences.
All right. Well, next up, there is a clip where we are back, everyone will be pleased to know, talking about investor calls and Strauss-Zelnick. Back then, we were talking about GTA Online versus Red Dead Online. And actually, there was an interesting little snippet.
And something that, again, Strauss-Zelnick stressed in the call just last week was they're going to continue to support GTA Online. And a lot of the conversations from various analysts at the end of the call were like, how are you going to support that and Red Dead? And it was super diplomatic. There was no big giveaways. But what he did say is we are going to continue to support both.
Yeah.
So I don't think they see them as competing, even though they clearly are.
Now, Dan, the big question, I imagine this is going to come up again pretty soon. And we talked about this last week about how they would envision GTA 6 online versus GTA 5. But clearly, it's something that they have gone through before. It's something that they've considered before. And it's not out of the question just to say, well, we're just going to continue to support both. Or in this case now, I guess all 3 things. Red Dead, GTA 5 and GTA 6.
We talked about exactly this last week, didn't we? We had a big in-depth chat about how will they support the existing GTA Online versus what GTA 6's version of online is, how they'll support across generations, etc., etc. We were having the same conversation 6 or 7 years ago. History proved that I guess they support where there's money and there's audience. So why would you expect anything different right now?
Something a bit more fun is up next. Release date predictions. Now, I'm going to caveat this for your sake to say that it was based around, this clip is from it being announced, GTA 6 that is, being announced in the same year as them releasing Red Dead 2, which I think even back then we were saying was a bit of a stretch.
Yes.
But putting all that to one side, here is a release date prediction from yourself, not the show, Dan, just from you.
Just from me. Essentially, a late autumn fall release for GTA 6 in 2020. Now, wow, probably more likely is they're going to announce GTA 6 sometime in 2019, maybe like early 2019-ish, right? You're still looking at late 2020, early 2021. And that's without the potentials for delays.
Yeah.
Are we saying that out loud? And I agree with this, is late 2020, early 2021, probably the earliest we're going to see GTA 6.
Yeah, on a next-gen machine, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I agree.
One of those bits is correct.
Let's focus on the thing we know to be true. We predicted it would be a next-generational leap. And I think we actually did go on in that clip to talk more about how it had to be a generational leap. The release date prediction I made was horrendously wrong. But I guess that goes to show the difficulty of this, and also like how unprecedented it is in terms of comparing GTA development cycles, because when we had this chat, it was 2018. That was heading on 6 years on from the release of GTA 5.
Yeah.
Based on historical precedents at that time, it felt like around about the time you would be thinking about another GTA. What we didn't realise is that GTA Online would continue to be this Leviathan money machine that would almost prevent them from launching something new. We couldn't have predicted, I guess, the internal turmoil at Rockstar in terms of staffing and turnover and the cultural change. We couldn't have predicted a pandemic, which would have, the timelines I was giving was the pandemic.
Yes.
No one saw that coming.
No one's releasing a game then, I don't
Sorry, it's not the pandemic prediction podcast. Didn't see that coming. It was just way out. And I think probably in terms of from the announced to release date, we were probably going to end up about right. But like the release date, it's a shot for the moon. And unfortunately, that shot went quite wide, like moonshots tend to do.
Yeah, there was some talk, and if you go back and listen to this episode, about the gap between announcement to release date, which has, over the last couple of games, been roughly around a 22-month gap. Definitely was that for GTA 5. And if you tack that onto the GTA 6 plan, well, the announcement was in December of 2023. Unfortunately, if we add 22 months to that, we get into an early 2026 release date. As we have discussed before on the podcast, I think they're working to different timelines this time. And actually, this project is further along than a normal cycle of marketing of release date to announcement to release date is. Obviously, an early 2026 release isn't out of the question, and it would fall into line of all of the other things that have happened in the past. But I think them putting that 2025 release date on trailer 1, I think they have more confidence because previous trailer 1s haven't had a date on it, as far as I can remember, and this one has. So I think that it is a slightly different marketing strategy this time around. And I'm sure they are aiming for some time in 2025.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things you could unpack there. I guess one of it is you can't directly overlay one time period on another. The conditions are different. The media is different. I think we remember less. We process more in the second. It's a TikTok fast impact culture. Not many games run high impact 2 to 3 year campaigns anymore. I think people like to do something short and sharp, which actually was an interesting hypothesis that we explored in the next point, which is sort of hilariously wrong. But
yeah, I don't have a clip of it, unfortunately. So I'm sparing you that.
No. I'd actually like to lean into that because that was a conversation that spills from this one. As in, by traditional rules, you would leave like 18 months to 2 years to do your promotional campaign. It used to be like a print media-based campaign with some video. And, the nature of the promotion cycle has changed tremendously. So I think the timings attached have changed tremendously.
Yeah, the thing you're talking about that we don't have a clip of, but maybe Nathan can go and find it, is you say, what if in crazy moonshot world again, if they announced it and then immediately released it?
What if, massive what if, they were to do what Netflix and J.J. Abrams have just done with the Cloverfield paradox, where they go from announcement to release as a massive, big FU to the industry. Look at what we're doing. We're dropping the biggest game in the world overnight. And I think I joked about this back in the days of GTA 5, but I think we're still quite a way away from the reality of that, because there's a reason there's an announcement and a hype cycle and a release cycle. And a lot of it is to do with pre-orders, physical sales, hype, building audience, all that stuff that's about making sure a game's a success and creating like an insulation window where you definitely know a lot of people are on board from day one.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd say that if anyone was going to do it, Rockstar and GTA 6 would be one of the only games that you could possibly even consider doing that with.
Of course.
But even then, it's like you have to look at all the marketing that Rockstar do around all of their games. They love marketing and trailers and teasers. But, you know, they still haven't announced an actual date. The next trailer could say something that's pretty close, you know, coming in 3 months' time.
Yeah, like, and I think this is, I'd have to go back to the clip exactly, but they wouldn't do this. But it's arguably the only one of the few games in the world where they could not even bother marketing it and release it overnight and drop it in a similar way to like the PT demo or whatever it was back in the day, and just go, GTA 6 is on sale today. And it would do just great. Through word of mouth, you know, it would advertise itself. No, I don't think any publicly listed company would perform such an egregiously risky experiment publicly when money's involved. They're almost obliged to do an expensive marketing campaign and mass media and reach out beyond the core, etc., etc. But it would be an interesting thing if anyone was ever to actually do this. Just drop a massive, massive game overnight. I think GTA could do it, and I dare wager it might not do as well as if they'd spent 18 months and several $100 million promoting it, but would it do like 80% of what it was projected or something? I honestly don't know. There's probably a tipping point between what they spend on marketing, you know, versus what they lose by just stealth dropping it overnight.
Yeah.
This is entirely, I've got to stress, this is such a hypothetical. I just think it's an amusing thing to interrogate, because GTA is one of the only games where you could even imagine it. And I think when we spoke in 2018, we were probably a bit high on what was at the time the new world of like Netflix and things like the Cloverfield. And what was that Cloverfield that dropped overnight?
Cloverfield Paradox, wasn't it?
Cloverfield Paradox dropped overnight on Netflix, and you were like, what? A movie's released and it's on a streaming platform and it hasn't got a marketing cycle. That felt quite revelatory at the time. That wasn't how movies worked. And they make them a point where games don't work as we know them. So it was just, I think it was exploring a rabbit hole conversation.
Yeah.
Like they've already announced it and are sort of playing the traditional game to this point.
Yeah,
but
before anyone jumps into the comments, we're not saying that is going to
No.
happen. We are just saying, you know, hypothetically and, you know, thinking about that kind of thing, there is a world in which it might have been considered at some point. And yeah, I can see them doing that. They'd need some kind of announcement, but it'd be like, it's out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think it would get a lot of mainstream pickup, even, you know, one of the most anticipated games just surprise released. It would be all over the news, just like a release of a normal GTA game would. Just, you know, like, oh, look, it's out right now and here's all the people. I guess you wouldn't get the coverage of like people queuing up at midnight, which I'm sure will still happen for this game. You won't get all of that 24-hour hype of, look, this man's been camping outside this store for 3 days waiting for GTA. But yeah, like you say, it could be offset by just...
Yeah, and I guess we're in a world now where, whilst we like to think it's people queuing outside physical stores, the reality is people in their bedrooms staring at download bars, which is a much less compelling BBC News report. But that's such is the world.
Shall we move on to the setting then, and what we talked about, where we thought that they would go next? Do you remember what we or you said about the setting?
Well, I know what setting I didn't want, and I know where we are, so
okay,
let's talk about that.
Let's have a listen to this little clip about the setting.
So, you know, they're not going to go back to Los Santos again because they're still there. That doesn't make any sense. Then you've got a choice between, is it Liberty City's turn, or, you know, is it Vice City? To only look through that narrow lens. And I don't think it would be bold to go back to either of those locations. As much as people are, you know, excited about, say, Vice City returning, that's the one everyone is crazy for. Like, I was on GTA forums this morning looking at their poll for the most popular location amongst, readers. And yeah, it was unequivocally Vice City, because we all like Vice City.
Yeah, because it's cool and it's 80s. And, there's a lot of people who grew up with those kind of songs and that imagery and stuff. But I think you're right. I don't think Vice City nowadays is as appealing to the audience that they'd want as it was back then.
Yeah, I agree. And there's even quotes, and this is in the Games Radar article, from I think either Leslie Benzies or perhaps one of the Hauser brothers, the sort of like creative leads of Rockstar, saying essentially, Vice City is a cool place, but it's all about the era. Like if you don't set it in the 80s, it just isn't the same vibe. So I don't see why they'd want to remake a 1980s, on its own, as a singular location. I just think it's a bit backward looking. It's a bit restrictive. The theory I like more, though again, I don't know where this is really coming from, is this idea that GTA might expand to encompass multiple states.
Would you like to start with the things that we were correct about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite pleased with my brain's thought process at that point. I, as I said then, and as I feel today, I understand all the reasons we're technically returning to Vice City, quote marks, because it's cool, TM, it's popular. It's popular. It's what the fans wanted, right? And Rockstar are playing the greatest hits. They're taking people back to what they want. But as I hinted about at the end of that, and this is actually kind of what they're doing, we're not really going back to just Vice City. We're going to Leonida.
Yeah.
And Leonida, as we talk about a lot on this show, could potentially encompass a number of larger locations and is certainly a bigger landmass. So I guess in a way, it's not just Rockstar. It is Rockstar remaking the Vice City we know and love, but it's reaching out beyond that to new states, new locations. It is more.
Yeah.
More than just a remake of the very actually quite small Vice City. I know. Look, and I wish they'd done something really crazy that we knew nothing about. But I think actually what they are doing is evolving the concept of Vice City to become a bigger location.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I think really what I was talking about here is that an 80s version of Vice City probably isn't the thing that is going to be as appealing. Like, I think as we are doing, returning to Miami or Vice City in 2020 or whenever it ends up being set does work, but you're not getting that 80s nostalgia, which back when Vice City came out, there were a lot of people playing games who probably remembered a bit of the 80s or at least knew a lot of the touch points and the music and that kind of thing. Nowadays we're 20 years beyond that, and it's just not going to have the same impact. But setting it in modern day does work, and I think the good point there at the end about I said you said multiple states, but I'm more and more increasingly feeling like multiple cities is going to happen for GTA 6, and it is going to be in the entire state of Leonida, encompassing some of those cities. So, good work from 2018.
Yeah, I think Rockstar have clearly been on the same thought journey and then done the practical side of it, where they went, oh my God, can we really make Liberty City, Vice City and so on? And yeah, they seem to have landed in what we feel like could be a good compromise.
Yeah, and we also went on to discuss some other, or like all the possible locations that were being touted around back in 2018, including at the time, as you mentioned, Tokyo, and there were other rumors circulating of like just generic in the future of like a sci-fi 2050 type setting or something like that.
Yeah.
But included in that was London. So here is me from the past discussing that.
I can't see the whole game being set there, but if we are going down that route of there are different cities, maybe they're set in different places around the world, you can see London being like a part of that, and just having a main or side character live there, that you go there every so often throughout the game, visit them in London, or you take control of them in London, and you go around and you do something that's related to the rest of the characters elsewhere. Like, that could work.
I mean, how much would I love for GTA to force itself into like Swindon city centre, right? But It's not going to happen.
So do I think there's going to be a London setting? Oh, well, no.
Yeah.
But do I want this to happen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is there a potential for that kind of thing to happen in 6, of there being a completely removed area away from where you would normally play to do some kind of side mission or some kind of element of a main mission? I think that's absolutely possible, and there is precedent for it. Like Red Dead 2 went to Guarma, which is like southeast of Cuba, which in my opinion is one of Rockstar's best missions. Like I love that mission because it's so different from the rest of Red Dead 2. And it shows that they're playing with that kind of, you can be teleported to another thing, and it does work in terms of a story, and it is a unique setting. There is a world in which something could be happening where the stars of GTA 6 need someone from another country, not necessarily London, to do a certain thing, or they have to work with a partner who is based in a different area of the world, and you just have to do a little bit of that mission in a pretty closed off area, like when you visit North Yankton in GTA 5. I can see that happening, and it being a total surprise. I can see them not talking about it at all until people get their hands on it.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about on the show in previous episodes, this idea of doing almost like a pocket mission. So it's not a really different feeling location that isn't physically connected to the world you're playing in, but you teleport there, not actually, but the equivalent of teleport there. And as you say, there's precedent from what you've said. There's also the St. Mark's Bistro mission, where CJ goes back. Like that sort of thing can happen. I've no idea will they or where it would go, but wouldn't it be great if they did something super noddy or weird, like go to London, harking back to the top-down games, or just something that's like ultra Easter egg for the core, and somewhere that feels really different. It's surrounded by English accents in a quaint English cafe, or that kind of stuff. I think on the predictions episode, like we whiffled on about the idea of driving around the Cotswolds in a Mini, which is like the quintessentially British thing, which is ridiculous, but I think would actually be a completely different feel for a GTA game and be quite exciting. Where we've all driven with a soft top down Miami Beach, but something as twee as that, maybe people around the world go, the last thing I want to do is drive one of your cruddy metros around the British rainy countryside.
They love it.
But it is a different feel, and whether it's London or somewhere else, it would be interesting to do something totally out of the box.
I mean, as we said, in recent editions of their games, they have gone for that sort of, they want that one standout moment that everyone talks about. Like going to that place in Red Dead 2, like crossing the border into Mexico in Red Dead. Like there's always, in their mind, I think, a moment that they'd like people to remember. And this kind of thing could be there. So, remember when you went off to London in GTA 6? That was fun, wasn't it? So, let's see. We did also touch on, to wrap all this back up, the setting of Vice City, and do you remember what we said about a Vice City setting other than what we've just played? There's some more, Dan. More gold.
Yes, please do. You've got a clip for this. Start the game in Vice City, in a prologue set in the 1980s. Every fan in the world loses their mind, and then you appear somewhere else doing something else, playing as a woman, and it will be something like I think like that. That'd be a way you could cross the bridge in a really sensible way. Give the fans what they want, but actually be progressive and move on.
And what you'd really want from that Rockstar marketing team, if you're listening, is just make all the trailers focused on Vice City, like literally everything. For the first 4 hours of that game is just Vice City, and then you don't hear anything about it until you're playing it, and it just flips into like, and now
so good.
We're in 2020.
Yeah, let's see.
I mean, we've discussed this before about the possibility of a prologue and some kind of hint towards the 80s. Like, it might happen. I think the good things about that is you tick the box of playing as a woman, and then we tick the box of it being 2020, which is, I'm quite happy with the way that these playbacks are going. Actually,
Yeah, no, there was some method to our rationale, which is, I guess, the entire point of doing a sleuthing show.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah. What you talked about in a previous episode, the idea of wouldn't it be fun if GTA 6 began with essentially a modern day remake of the final mission of GTA Vice City, with you playing as Tommy Vercetti.
That would be fun.
No, but it would be fun and would actually completely dolly into this idea where the game begins and, like, shock, you're actually literally back in the 80s playing as Tommy, and then there's something that bridges to, hey, now you're Lucia and Jason and it's 2020 whatever, it's probably modern day, right? 2024, 2025, which is essentially what we were suggesting. I think that would be a cool thing. I think what would have been cool is if the marketing had just made it look like it was 1980s and then it pulled the rug, where it might be in fact the reverse. This is massively caveated, by the way, as it might. What they could do is present it all as present day and then throw in as an Easter egg the opening mission being 80s.
Yeah.
I'd be really surprised were everything we've seen to be part of a prologue where it actually does something else, like the reverse, where the prologue's in the modern day and then it goes back to the 80s. I don't think that's going to happen. But
no, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that'd be an insane, right? That's not going to happen. But you could still, a bit like GTA 5, do a prologue,
yes.
Possibly even set in a different time period. That would be really fun. Lots of people. I said it many times on this show. I would be staggered were there not to be some kind of overt flashback to the 1980s in Vice City. And, a playable version of that, ideally, rather than just maybe you go to a retro-themed cafe or there's a character you remember. It'd be nice to play again in that era.
Yeah, and I even doesn't have to be like a prologue. I think, like you say, a flashback mission where you're talking to a character and they're like, hey, this is just like, the thing that my dad did or my grandfather did, and then it just flips back and you're in the same place but back in the 80s and doing some stuff for a little bit, would be a great nod towards the heritage of Vice City and where we are now. Let's move on to the characters. Now, we discussed who the potential characters could be, and then we go on to like the kind of things that they would be doing and what their roles would be. But first off, like, who could we be playing as? Who did we think that we might be playing as before we knew anything about the game?
What I think would be a really cool thing for a first trailer would be to just show a teaser of a location and show one playable character and definitely make that a woman. And I mean, let's be honest, of course you're going to play as a man. Of course you are, right? They're not insane. They're not going to not let you play as a man. But I just think that would be a funny thing to do.
Bang on. 10 points for you, Dan. I think what we did get in the trailer was obviously more of a tease than just a tease of a location. Like, we know it's going to be Vice City / Miami. And we got a female lead. Now we know, in quotation marks, that there's also going to be a male character, but it's only really based on the leaks. Can you imagine that if the leaks didn't happen and we saw that trailer to me says that there is just a female lead, and maybe that's just her significant other or partner. And if we hadn't seen any of the leaks or knew about what was happening, there would be so much debate around whether you can actually play as that guy. Is he playable? Who is he? But I think the focus would be, it is a lead female character in the next GTA.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in there. One is exactly what you said, where had we not seen this enormous leak, people would be much more unsure about whether there was another character and were they playable. We feel like we know there is. I mean, that's the truth of the leaks. It feels that way. But otherwise, we'd be staring that question I posed in 2018 head on. Like, what I would also say is it's a measure of, even since 2018, the world has moved on even more than it had been too late to move on in 2018. And I think the full thing I'd said, even back in 2018, was like, I think at this stage, i.e. 2018, it would be horrendous and tone deaf not to include a playable female character. It's the obvious move to represent 50% of the human race. It's beyond saying now, they just have to do it. Now, that felt true in 2018. It feels a load more true in 2024.
6 years later.
And feels like, I don't feel like it no longer feels as contentious to say you only play as a female character. I think people will be more accepting of it. But even back in 2018, and I've got to stress, these are not my thoughts. These are me reflecting, I guess, the mood of the time and how, and it still is toxic online, right? There are some people who will go, I don't want to play a game as a woman, right? There's going to be that idiot mindset a lot. But even back then, it felt like it would have been risky for them to only have a female lead in a game that perhaps had been associated to that point with more of a male player base. It was a bit more gang culture. You know, it would have felt even bolder then than it does now. They've done what felt like they had to do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's like you say, I can imagine a world where we didn't know anything about it. And I mean, we would have had weeks more stuff to talk about on this show. Like we could have debated, is he a playable character or not for at least 3 episodes.
Yeah, and possibly riled through the toxic swamp of people saying, I don't want to just play as Lucia, I want to play as blah, blah, blah.
We did go into the characters a bit more. That was more of a character trailer reveal type thing. But in terms of the roles, we actually discussed that as well. And we had some thoughts on that. So here they are.
The interesting spin on that is, again, there's unsourced rumours going around that Rockstar might do a flip on, you know, multiple characters where one person plays as a goodie and another as a baddie, sort of cops versus robbers. I think I literally said this on GTA 5 o'clock about 5 years ago, where I'd said, wouldn't it be cool if you played from 2 perspectives? And this was, again, based on what was the big show of the time, like The Wire. The Wire's ancient now, right? But that did force you to look at a complex crime or political or whatever it is network through different eyes. And that's something that I think Rockstar could very definitely play upon.
Or I guess you have multiple characters, but you play through the game 3 times and see the stories from different perspectives. So you play as the cops 1 playthrough and you see how that works out. And you play as then the criminals in another playthrough and you see all the planning and the behind the scenes stuff that went into all the stuff that you did. Then you play as someone else, and maybe all of those 3 storylines with the NPCs change the interaction some way. Like if you do one thing in the police playthrough, someone might come to you and go, oh, I saw these guys robbing that bank, and you get a bit of a tip off or something like that. But
first off, back in 2018, I hadn't seen The Wire. Now it is 2024. Still not seen The Wire.
And as I said in 2018, The Wire's ancient now.
Yeah, so what's the point?
Yeah.
It's probably not even worth watching anymore, right? Got lots of other things to watch. There were some bits in that. I don't know if you got any further thoughts on it, Dan. The bit at the end about the multiple playthroughs, listening to that back, I'm not sure you were totally convinced about that. I think you were agreeing with me in principle.
Well, I still don't know if I entirely agree they would make you play through the same chronology single player, literally as different characters.
Yeah, I mean, we almost know that's not happening now, right?
Yeah, but the idea of you could play as a goodie or a baddie, inverted commas, and view a complex situation through 2 different sets of eyes, perhaps played out in real time. And we did actually discuss exactly this when we were doing our initial trailer analysis.
Yeah, we did.
Saying, wouldn't it be interesting if, you know, let's say, to assume Lucia is the criminal, Jason is the undercover cop. It might even be vice versa, or not at all. All of those scenarios could be true. But then there was that speculation we did about that body cam scene, you know, where you go through and some people were saying, oh, that's Jason. Like, just, that's not, you can't say that with any certainty. But the idea of, we did literally say this in this analysis, that first person scene, the body cam scene, is literally a different perspective, as in it's first person and body cam. And it would also be, in a more metaphorical sense, a different perspective on a scenario where you're no longer playing as the criminal but the law enforcer. This, as we said in the 2018 prediction show, this might even be something we're about to go into more depth about what could be potentially interesting themes for GTA. The biggest issue in the world, or one of the biggest issue in the world, is the fracturing of society through social media, ultra-binary politics, a complete inability to see the view of the other side. Is there any greater issue for Rockstar to explore in modern America than that? As we approach election year, that it fills me with absolute terror for what it will do to societal harmony in the US and the wider globe. Maybe it's too on the nose for Rockstar. Maybe it's just so fraught they don't interrogate it. But Like any game that looks at perspectives like that would be interesting. I'd made notes actually on what we'd said back in the day, and I was thinking actually what we were describing was almost what The Last of Us Part 2 became, where that was play from two different perspectives and see a different version of events. That was that. But I guess that's a game that is whilst that game was really long.
Yeah, it's two games in one.
Yeah, it was really long. It was still shorter than you'd expect a GTA to be, and a bit more compact and sort of made more sense. It's super narratively threaded, like much less emergent than a GTA game.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you are a bit on rails, right? Like
it's pretty linear.
Yeah. It's like hidden, but it's on rails. So that feels like that's already done that, but in a different way. Well, GTA is much. It's a world that we recognise. It's always been an amplification, a social satire of the world of today. But as we've said many times, and literally Dan Houser has said this, America is almost beyond satire. You only need to hold a mirror up to itself and go, wow. And this is what they've done. You look at those like Strangers and Freaks style snippets in the GTA 6 trailer. They're all based on real things.
Yeah.
They look ludicrous, but that's reality. It's scary.
And these are the things we were saying back in 2018, and now it's 6 years on. Just like the things we were talking about just now. Like it's probably got worse. So that and there's more and more stuff for them to be able to feed into the narrative and the world of GTA 6 and make it feel, like you say, maybe too realistic. But there's loads of material for them to play with. I like the suggestion of there being, well, as we discussed, cops versus robbers, and maybe the two protagonists are on different sides, like you say, like in The Last of Us. But we know we think there's going to be character switching, so you're not going to get that full playthrough of like do it from one perspective, do it from the other. But there could be story missions where you get a choice to do it from one angle or the other, which they played with a bit in 5 actually, and you could then get a different view of seeing one mission play out one way. You go back, you play it again as someone else, and you see it play out a different way, and you start to build the narrative threads yourself almost by going, oh, okay, well, Lucia didn't get in the truck on time because her partner was off doing something else, or didn't do it because he was being told to do something else by somebody else. There's loads of different ways you could make that happen. And you could tie it into the first bit of the trailer if you really want to put your tinfoil hat on. When they, the person in the jail says, "Do you know why you're here, Lucia?" And she says, "Bad luck, I guess." Now, that line to me feels like too knowing and dismissive to be something like this. But what if that kind of thing then triggers a flashback where, do you know why you're here? Oh, I guess it was bad luck. Flashback, you're back in the mission that ended with her going to jail, but actually you see the stuff that transpired that meant she was always going to jail. It was just that you playing as, let's say, Jason, put together a string of events that ended up her going to jail, and then you get to find out why that happened, and you're like, oh, look, he's actually working for somebody else. There's some cool gameplay elements I think you could add in by having two different perspectives, like you say, like The Last of Us, but in a condensed 5 to 10 minute sequence.
I'd be disappointed were they not to explore exactly that. And if you look at recent Rockstar games, even the GTAs, they've become increasingly self-reflexive, and I don't know if I say moral, maybe amoral, but forcing you to question your reality. You look at GTA 4, it's set up as a revenge mission where Nico looks for that special someone, and when he finds that person, is essentially placed in front of a mirror, and the character says back to him, "You have done everything I have done, and you expect that killing me will make everything all right. It won't. In pursuing this revenge legacy, you've become me." I thought that was a really powerful moment in gaming. GTA 5 forces you to choose, or gives you a sort of false choice of who do you off. And they've done that in other games where do you kill this person or that person. So to take it even further and really question the right and wrong of things would be interesting. I just want to put an aside in that, there's one of the biggest movies in the world right now, certainly in America, is the new Civil War movie, the Alex Garland film, which is about essentially America at civil war. the thing that I guess is shrewd about that is, whilst it presents what looks like, let's say, what we see as the traditional left and the traditional right, the film isn't really interested in the politics and the rights and the wrongs of it. It's more of a neutral journalist view of why do people form such binary conclusions and what problems that causes if people can't meet middle ground. And that feels like a turf that GTA could live in, because it's a really popular product played by people of all political affiliations. And there's probably a clever way to get both sides of the political argument, and I do literally mean both sides, there's no right or wrong in this, to try and see things from someone else's perspective. And if GTA could do that, it goes from just being an anticipated entertainment blockbuster to like a cultural phenom with something to actually say about the world. So are Rockstar bold enough, or it's so difficult to do. Easy for me to say, difficult to do. Could you create a game that forces people genuinely to introspect on their own choices and binary beliefs?
And finally then, Dan, GTA Online. Now, we only briefly touched on this and how it might evolve for GTA 6. And having listened back to this, well, let's see what you think.
One thing I would say that I'd like GTA Online to do is it to be an evolving world. So you start at the beginning of the game and you see, like what we thought at the beginning of GTA 5, you see buildings being built. So they start off under construction, and as you go through the months and the years, that city changes as you keep playing it. So you're like, oh, they're opening a new casino, which never happened, but maybe they'll do it eventually. And oh, they're building a new racetrack over there, and I can take the car that I'm going to eventually save up to buy on that racetrack eventually. Like, that would be the next step.
Well, the casino's open.
Yeah.
So that happened.
It only took how many years was it to happen?
A number of years, but actually that's become a pretty big feature in GTA Online now. A lot of stuff happens in that casino, so it took them a long time, but they eventually got there. But yet, like the evolving world of online, I mean, I think I can see it being almost a given now, right? They played around with that kind of time dimension in Red Dead 2, as like the world did slightly evolve as you played it. Like people built new houses and the villages and the cities changed slightly. I think you only have to look at things like Fortnite, Call of Duty with their evolving maps to see like that's where we are now, like today in 2024. Yeah. This game isn't out until, even from today's date, 12 to 18 months roughly. It's only going to get more apparent that that's what people want. They don't want to be stuck in just one world now. They want things to change, and even like the gun physics and the meta behind PvP to change, and like the shotguns have been tweaked, so now they work slightly differently. All of that I can see being added into the next edition of GTA Online, and expanding that city or changing that city over the months and years that game is going to exist for just feels like a given to me at this stage.
Yeah, I think you've always advocated for this, and I think it's something that
it's because they were going to build that tower down the Mile High Club, and they never built it.
At that tower. I remember talking about that tower for like 10 years. It never got built. But it's bigger than that now, isn't it? It's not just the evolving physical world. It's about dynamic, time-based events. So it's like we've seen in Fortnite, and you name the pop concert. But they were cultural phenomenons that happened in Fortnite, where real-life artists were doing gigs effectively in Fortnite. And that's just amazing. And you would think Rockstar would look at that and say, we need to be in this space, because we're more of a music company than Epic. What the hell's going on here? We should have gigs in our clubs. We should do this thing. So you'd think that would be part of what they're about. Like, I was even looking this morning, and this had evaded my gaze at the time. Like Rockstar launched their own record label, like a dance music label, so that there's almost like another real world incentive to feature their own music as part of their own record label. It just feels like a thing they should do. Now, I don't think it will be as extreme as Fortnite, where the map reskins to one stage where you're playing as Greek gods and the next characters from The Last Airbender, or what you name the madness of the characters, right?
Yeah.
Because Fortnite, whilst the core of it is exactly the same, it completely reskins itself. I can't see GTA doing that, but I can see like pockets of the world being exceedingly dynamic and time-based.
Yeah, and definitely, like you say, time-based events where something could pop up on the beach for a week and you could go and do something and then it would disappear and then something else would happen. Like that kind of, timed-based events that happen only for a limited amount of time. And maybe like Fortnite, by doing it, you get some kind of in-game reward, like a T-shirt to say, hey, I was there and I did the horse racing on the beach or whatever.
Yeah, I went to Hillbilly Mud Club Fest 2026.
Yeah,
I got the virtual hat to commemorate attending.
Yeah.
Limited edition hat.
And now I'm selling that hat for $500 because none of you guys have it.
Oh, the old crypto spectre or whatever it is. But, that sort of stuff, Rockstar could probably confidently plan for a 10 to infinite year timeline for this next version of GTA Online. It felt like GTA 5 that became GTA Online. It never felt certain that was going to succeed or would go on as long as it did. But I think now they can plan almost thinking, what's our 5, 10, 20-year horizon?
Yeah, and they were doing it, they have been doing events like that in GTA Online. We participated in some of them. It changes seasonally. You get Christmas, you get snow, you get events that happen around I think there's even Thanksgiving sales. All of that kind of stuff is definitely going to transition into GTA Online. I have one more bonus clip before we go, and fans of this podcast will appreciate that this is a longer episode than normal, but I think this clip is fun. Dan hasn't heard this clip. He might have heard the other clips, but this one's just for you, Dan.
There's even been questions about time travel.
This is mental. This is mad. Like this is one of those things I feel like a website invented a rumor and quoted themselves as the source. And to have literal time travel, get stuffed. That's not going to happen. Like, that's mad.
So it appears things have changed in your time travel opinions.
Well, is this where you play the clip then of me saying in the other episode about the Bermuda Triangle?
I don't have that clip, but that's what I'd hope.
Put them side by side.
Listeners would be going, hang on, didn't Dan say he really wanted some time travel?
Now, I would either say, if you wanted to make the most amazing and ridiculous Easter egg, I would throw you into not just a different location, but a different time. And that's something, and that's something that sounds ridiculous, but if you watched a new film starring a famous adventurer, that's actually a plot device.
Spoilers.
It's actually a plot device. And so you're like, oh, right, they could do that. And then if you really want to make it Easter eggy, I would throw people back to a sectioned off zone of a Red Dead map.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Imagine
right?
flying a plane over.
Yeah. Oh. How good would that be? And you meet John Marston. Oh, well, I said in 2018, this is funny though, in 2018, a game that was literally like about Back to the Future style time travel would have been insane, right? And that was, again, a mad, made-up rumour that did the rounds about the game would leap between time periods. What I do think is possible is that by the sort of the elephant of the Bermuda Triangle gives you license to do something wacky. And again, I think I more enjoyed exploring that wormhole than I think is definitely going to happen.
Yeah, and I've maybe taken that clip out of context just for fun.
No, but it is fun. It is fun. And I would advocate time travel through the Bermuda Triangle, not in a DeLorean, is what I'm saying, or in some other ridiculous like brain chip style device or cable from the X-Men style wristband.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Fine. Well, that about wraps up our analysis of our 2018 episode. If you guys have any thoughts about what we said previously or what we have said today, please let us know in the comments. Get in touch with us at GTA VO Clock on Twitter. And Dan and I will be back next week at 6 p.m. for another episode of GTA 6 O'Clock.